The forest did not say goodbye. It didn't need to, because once you leave a voice behind here, you're never really gone. The wind was thin, the air cold, dry, ancient, far above the forest line, where no birds flew and no fires stayed lit. The mountain stood, tall, cracked, crowned in silence. At its summit, a cliff face, flat, smooth, and carved into it, a face, massive, expressionless, its eyes wide, staring at the sky, at the moon, always. No one knew who carved it. No one knew when. But stories said it had always been there. Watching, a woman arrived alone, wrapped in furs, face burned by cold and distance. She did not speak. She only sat beneath the stone face and waited, not for the wind to stop, not for the night to warm, but for the moon to rise, and for the guardian to remember. The moon rose slow, heavy, full. It cleared the horizon like a ship made of silver. Its light fell across the cliff, soft, cold, and the stone face changed. Not its shape, its weight. The woman felt it before she saw it. A pressure, like breath against skin. She looked up. The eyes glowed faintly. Not bright, but alive. She stood. Wind hissed through the rocks. A low moan, or a forgotten whisper. Then the stone beneath the eyes cracked. A thin line, a seam. She stepped closer, brushed snow from the base of the face. And there, letters. Faint, worn, ancient. Not a warning, not a name. A question. When the moon forgets to rise, will you remember what it saw? The wind stopped, and somewhere deep inside the mountain, something turned. She curled against the rock. The air was too thin for fire, too still for fear. The moonlight wrapped her like water, and sleep came, but not forgetful sleep. The mountain dreamed with her. She stood in a time before time. The sky was darker, the stars closer. Beneath her feet, people gathered in circles. Not tribes, not warriors, watchers. They wore no crowns, carried no blades, only mirrors, shallow bowls of obsidian. Each night, they angled them toward the sky, toward the moon. They whispered, not to each other, to it. Tell us when to plant. Tell us when to die. Tell us who we were. And the moon answered, not in words, in shadows, in curves, in silence. And when it blinked for the first time, they carved its gaze into the mountain, so they would never forget what had once shone. The wind returned first, soft, cold, familiar. Then her breath, steady, real. She opened her eyes. The moon was lower now, its light thin, fading. The face above her had dimmed, no longer glowing, but still watching. The seam beneath its eyes was closed. The letters? Gone. But the question remained, pressed into her chest like a heartbeat. She stood, shoulders stiff, mind full. She looked once more into those carved eyes, not seeking answers, only understanding. Then she turned, began the slow walk down the mountain. She carried no artifact, no photograph, no proof, only a rhythm, a silence, and a single line etched not in stone, but in memory. If the moon forgets to rise, I will remember what it saw. The river below was deep, not wide, not fast, just endless. Its surface didn't ripple. It reflected. Above it stretched a bridge, thin, unornamented, carved from dark stone. It had no railings, no gates, no name. Birds didn't fly over it. Rain didn't fall on it. Only wind passed. And even then, softly, a traveler stood at one end. She'd been walking for days, but her footsteps stopped here, not from fear, from reverence. She stepped forward, one pace, then another. The bridge made no sound, not under her, not around her. No creak, no echo, only stillness. And in that stillness, a memory stirred, not hers. The bridge remembered. She continued across. Slow, measured. The stone felt warm beneath her soles. Not sun-warmed, worn. Each step pulsed gently, like tapping into someone else's memory. Then a whisper, not in her ears, in her bones. One carried grief. One carried a promise. One never looked back. She stopped, looked over the edge. Nothing, only the deep mirror of the river below. Still, waiting, she pressed her hand to the stone railingless edge. Another whisper. You carry silence. She frowned. Not confusion. Recognition. The bridge wasn't a path. It was a listener. A vessel. It held not weight, but stories. But only those given in silence. She took a breath. Held it. Let go. And walked on. With each step, the bridge remembered her. She reached the midpoint. The air was different here. Thinner. Slower. Like breath held between thoughts. Below, the river glowed faintly. Not with light. With depth. She looked down. At first, only her reflection. Then another. A child. Then a man. Then a woman wrapped in cloth. Faces shifted across the surface. Not ripples. Layers. She knelt. Touched the edge. No splash. No cold. Just stillness. The water responded. A shape bloomed beneath. Not a body. A bridge. This bridge. Endless. Mirrored. Built not from stone, but memory. And on it, thousands of shadows. Each walking. Each silent. Each leaving something behind that no one else could carry. She understood then. The bridge didn't hold weight. It held burden, and it never broke. She rose from the edge. The river below dimmed, settling back into silence, into reflection. She walked. No fanfare, no revelation, just steps, and the growing knowledge that something unseen had shifted. At the far end of the bridge, the land waited. Grass, soil, sound, birdsong returned. A breeze touched her face, but she didn't turn around. Not of fear, out of understanding. What the bridge carried was not meant to follow. It was meant to be held. By stone, by stillness, by silence. She paused one last time, not to leave a mark, not to speak, just to feel the quiet one more time. And the bridge? It listened, as it always had, and added her silence to its own. Smoke curled in thin spirals above the rooftops. Not from war, not from kitchens, from libraries. They burned gently, calmly, deliberately. The city below was quiet, not panicked, resolute. Scrolls were stacked in the plazas, books bound in thread and leather, laid in circles around fire pits. The people did not cry. They watched, some with tears, most with peace. At the center of the city stood a great tower. Its walls were carved with thousands of symbols, languages from every edge of the known world. Inside it, silence. A woman stood at the base of the tower, holding a single tablet. Stone, unmarked, smooth. She whispered into it once, a single word, then placed it at the top of the stairs. And the city never spoke again. The boy came alone, dust in his hair, cracked sandals, a satchel filled with questions. He didn't know the city's name. No one did. It had none left, only ruins, and quiet. The tower still stood, tall, gray, unmoving. Vines crept along its base, but never touched the top. He climbed slowly, each step echoing too loud, in a place that had forgotten how to speak. At the summit, he found the stone, still there, still smooth. It vibrated faintly under his fingers, not with power, with memory. He placed both hands on it, closed his eyes, and felt a shape, not a sound, not a voice, a weight, a rhythm, a presence. This is not for the ears, the silence told him. It is for the soul. And for a moment, he understood everything and nothing. He opened his mouth. No sound came, not from fear, not from confusion, from knowing. The word inside him wasn't made of letters. It had no vowels, no breath, only shape, only gravity. It pressed gently against his chest, like a heartbeat not his own. He looked down from the tower. The city was still, empty of people, full of presence. He imagined what would happen if he spoke. Would the word vanish? Would it shatter the quiet? Would it end something? Or worse, would it be heard wrong? He touched the stone again. Warm, alive. You do not speak the word. He remembered. You carry it. So he stood, turned, and descended, step by step, without whisper, without echo. And with each step, the silence deepened, not heavier. Tulwa. The road was quiet. Dust rose behind his feet. But he did not look back. There was nothing to see. The city remained. Whole. Silent. Alive in its own way. The word was still with him. Not in his mouth. Not even in his mind. In his movement. His pace was slower now. Lighter. Each breath deeper. He met others along the road. Traders. Pilgrims. Wanderers. They asked where he came from. He smiled, but said nothing. They asked if he was lost. He shook his head. One old man asked if he had found what he was looking for. And the boy, he simply placed a hand on his chest. Over the quiet, over the shape, over the word that was never meant to be spoken. And the wind that passed between them. Understood. The dunes rolled like frozen waves. Miles of golden silence. No roads. No footprints. Only heat. But at the center of the emptiness, a shadow. A ring of stone. Low. Round. Unmoving. A well. Cracked with age. But whole. Its rope gone. Its bucket vanished. But the stone rim held firm. And the wind never filled it. Travelers passed. Some ignored it. Some drank. None understood it. The desert swallowed everything. Except this. One woman arrived alone. Her mouth dry. Her feet cracked. She leaned over the edge. Cool air rose to meet her. Not just water. Welcome. She found the iron pegs. Driven into the wall long ago. Worn smooth. Still strong. One hand, then another. She lowered herself into the dark. The air grew cooler, then damp. Her breath echoed against stone. Not loud, but deep. Halfway down, she paused, listened, not to sound, to stillness. Then continued. The bottom wasn't mud, or bone, or gold, just stone. And in the center, a pool. Clear, perfect, silent. No insects, no smell, just presence. She knelt beside it, looked into its surface. Her reflection didn't move. Not wrong, just delayed, as if the water was remembering her. Before showing her back to herself, she whispered, "Why are you still here?" The water rippled once, and answered, without words. The ripple faded, the surface cleared, and then changed. No longer her reflection. A sky, stormless, endless, dark with ash. People walked below it, not in fear, in ceremony. Each carried a jar, unfired clay, empty. They walked across dunes that did not shift, toward the same well. One by one, they knelt, whispered, lowered their jars into the dark, but drew up no water, only silence. Then they sealed the jars, carried them back, into the waiting desert. The vision shifted. She saw those same jars buried in hillsides, under floorboards, beneath pillows, not to be opened, only held. The well had not been dug for thirst. It was built to hold what could not be spoken, but must never be forgotten. She stood. The pool shimmered once more. Calm, complete. She didn't drink, didn't touch. It had given her something else. She placed her hand on the stone wall, closed her eyes, and breathed. Not deeply, not loudly, just fully. Then she climbed. One rung, then another, back toward the heat, the light, the silence above. At the rim, the desert waited. Dry, vast, unchanged. She stepped out, turned, and bowed her head to the well. Not in worship, in recognition. She left no marker, no name, only footprints. Faint, already fading, but something in the air followed her. A hush, a stillness, and deep below, the water remembered. One more soul, who knew not to disturb it, only to carry it, gently, in silence. The valley had always been green, until it wasn't. Rain fell for 40 nights, then 40 more. The river climbed, past banks, past fields, past homes, families packed, left behind goats, stones, walls. All but one, a house by the bend, wooden, small, crooked. Everyone said it would go first. It didn't. The water rose to the doorstep, then the windows, then the roof. But the house didn't move. No creak, no sigh, no surrender. Boats passed. Children pointed. Why doesn't it fall? No one knew. But inside that house, beneath the rafters, behind a sealed door, something remembered. Not fear, not strength. Someone. The water receded. Slow, reluctant. Mud coated the trees. Stone paths vanished. The village was gone. All but the house. It stood as before, leaning slightly, roof patched with moss. Dry. A traveler came walking. Old boots. A bag of letters no one would read. He had grown up in this valley, left when the rains began. Now he was back. He stood before the door. It opened. He didn't knock. Inside, dust, sunlight, silence. Nothing ruined. Nothing washed away. He stepped through each room. Noticed what hadn't changed. The kettle, the shawl, the carved chair near the window, and beneath the floorboards. A sound, soft, steady. He knelt, listened. A breath. Still there, still waiting. He pulled the boards back, slowly, gently. No creak, no splinter, just a hush, as if the house was holding its breath. Beneath the wood, stone, carved smooth, circular. At the center, a box. Small, wrapped in wax cloth. He lifted it. It was warm. He unwrapped it, not rushed, almost afraid. Inside, a lock of hair, a folded note, and a shard of glass. Black, curved, like part of a mirror that had never lied. He touched the note. No words, just a fingerprint. He knew whose. A mother's. Gone now. But not gone. The house hadn't stood against the flood. It hadn't resisted. It had remembered. What was built for? Who was built by? And why cannot fall? Until the last memory was held again. He sat beside the open floor. The box in his lap. The house around him, still. Listening. He thought of staying. Sweeping. Fixing the window. Boiling tea. But he knew. This house hadn't waited for him to return. It had waited to be heard. He folded the cloth around the box once more, placed it back on the stone, pressed the floorboards closed. No nails, no locks, just care. He stood, walked to the door, paused. The fire burned low. Coals breathed softly in the dark. Around it, silence. Then movement. A figure stepped forward. Old, wrapped in cloth, eyes clouded but clear. In their hand, a pouch, tied with sinew, stained with ash. They knelt, opened it. Inside, no parchment, no compass, only a strip of cured skin. Pale, soft, blank. The others watched. The figure held it over the smoke. Waited. Lines appeared, not drawn, revealed. Curves, dots, patterns. A map, not of roads, not of kingdoms, but of paths walked, by feet, by thought, by memory. No one spoke, because the map didn't need to be read. It needed to be felt. She was the youngest, barely old enough to remember her own path. But when the elder raised the strip of skin, she stepped forward. No fear, no question, just listening. She knelt, placed both palms gently on the map. It was warm, like sun-soaked stone, like breath held too long. Then movement, not outside, inside. Her heart shifted. Her feet tingled. She was standing in a forest she'd never seen. She walked, not in dream, not in vision, in remembrance. She passed hills no longer green, touched stones no longer standing, and heard songs from voices long buried. But the ground beneath her whispered, "We remember through walking." And you are walking now. She blinked, back at the fire, still kneeling, still touching the map. But her eyes were full, not with tears, with distance. She pulled her hands away, slowly, reluctantly. The elder leaned forward, turned the strip over. It had changed. New curves, new dots, a small mark where her fingers had rested. Not ink, not blood, just warmth, set into the skin. The others leaned closer. They didn't ask. They simply nodded. They understood. The map wasn't sacred because of what it showed. It was sacred because it remembered every person who had touched it, every place they carried with them, every step that wasn't forgotten. She looked down at her own feet, dusty, tired, but now belonging. The elder handed her the pouch, not as a gift, as a promise. You walk next, they said, and the map folded itself, gently, in her hands. Dawn touched the hills, thin gold on silent rocks. She stood alone now, the map tied to her belt, light as breath. She did not look at it. She didn't need to. The path wasn't in lines. It was in motion. With every step, a story rose, not hers alone, but theirs. The ones who had touched it, carried it, listened. She crossed rye fields, stepped over forgotten streams, watched a crow circle once, then vanish. She spoke no words, left no markers, but where she walked, the ground softened, and somewhere behind her, a fire flickered. The elders waited, quiet, smiling. They knew when she returned, if she returned, the map would be different, not because it was written on, but because she had walked with it, and had watched. The city once spoke in scrolls, walls lined with parchment, skylights above reading rooms, silence held like ceremony. Then the fire came, not from rage, from instruction. Every scroll stacked, every book opened wide like wings, set alight, not by soldiers, by scribes. Their faces were calm. The fire burned 7 days, then 7 more. When the smoke cleared, the library was gone. Only ash remained, but beneath it, a single stone floor tile remained clean, untouched, cool. Years passed, and one day, a child playing in the ruins pressed her hand to it. The stone warmed, and in the back of her mind, a word, not in her language, not in any, just a sound, familiar, soft, a return. She came back the next night, and the next, always alone, always quiet. The city called her ruin. She called it listening. Each evening, she sat by the tile, not moving, not speaking, just waiting, and the ash responded. It shifted, lifted in patterns, not letters, shapes, a spiral, a hand, a curve like the edge of a question. She began to trace them in the dust, first with fingers, then with breath. The shapes moved faster, clearer, still no voice, still no language. But she understood. The words weren't lost. They had simply changed form, escaped the fire, hidden in silence, waiting for someone who would read with the skin, not the eyes. And she was that someone. One evening, as dusk painted the ruins in gold, she stood. The tile was warm beneath her feet. The ash settled. She didn't speak. She moved. A slow circle, arms rising, palms open. Each gesture echoed something ancient, something unwritten. The air shimmered, not with light, with recognition. She inhaled deeply, exhaled through her hands. The ash lifted, swirled, curved, followed. Not wild. Responsive. The ruins were no longer quiet. Not loud, but awake. A voice without sound. A song without music. And as she danced, something changed in her chest. Not a word. A knowing. The language had never been spoken. Not truly. It had been embodied. And now, through her, it remembered how to return. They came quietly, one by one, drawn by something they couldn't name. Not a voice, not a signal, just a pull. They watched her move. No applause, no question, only stillness. The child didn't stop, didn't explain. She turned, bent, rose, each movement deliberate, unhurried. The ash followed. Shapes bloomed at her feet. Not drawings, but meanings. A stranger wept, not from sadness, from memory. Another placed a hand to her own chest, as if remembering how to breathe. No one asked what the shapes meant. They didn't need to, because they felt it. The fire hadn't destroyed the language. It had refined it, until only the most important parts remained. Movement, witness, breath, and silence. The harbor was silent. No gulls, no tide, only a ship. It rocked gently, anchored to nothing, tied to nothing. No sail, no helm, just a flat deck, weathered but whole. The villagers avoided it. They said it didn't float. It rested. No one had seen it arrive. No one saw it leave. Until one morning, a group gathered at the shore. They brought nothing, said nothing. One by one, they stepped aboard. No oars, no captain, no map. But the moment the last foot touched wood, the ship moved. No wind, no current, just motion. Smooth, sure, straight into the open sea. And behind them, the water whispered, "They remember, so I will carry them." The ship drifted across glass. No waves, no wind, no wake, just movement. The passengers sat quietly, not afraid, not eager. They knew. The journey wasn't about where. It was about when. One woman knelt at the bow, closed her eyes, pressed her palm to the deck. A man hummed, not a song, but a rhythm. Another reached out and touched the wood, like it was an old friend. None spoke, but the ocean listened. Beneath them, the water pulsed. Soft, warm, curious. The sea wasn't moving the ship. They were. With memory, with grief, with hope too old for language. And the ship, built from wood that once knew fire, floated like a thought that refused to sink. The sun sank without ceremony. No blaze, no fanfare, just fading gold, and then blue, then black. The sea remained still. Above, stars appeared. 1, then 5, then thousands. The passengers looked up, and the sky shifted, not for all, for each. One woman saw constellations that didn't exist in any chart. A spiral, a doorway, a name she hadn't spoken in years. A boy saw a path, made of dots, that glowed like old embers. The stars weren't guiding them. They were remembering them, reflections of moments, held so tightly. They rose into the night. No one pointed. They simply watched and breathed, and the ship kept moving, not through water, through memory. The sea brightened, not from dawn, from stillness. The ship slowed, not stopped, rested. Ahead, land, unmapped, unnamed, soft sand, tall grass, silence. One by one, the passengers stood. No orders, no signal, just time. They stepped off, not as pilgrims, not as survivors, as carriers of names they'd never said aloud, of stories too delicate for pages.